it's funny because it actually, thinking about the shows back then, you didn't really have that sort of pressure, did you? You just kind of thought, well, I'm doing this show and I'm jumping into it.
I think mental preparation wasn't really too much of a thing. It's definitely something that I push on to my first time as athletes now because it's more prominent, and there's a lot more pressure, I'd say, on first timers. But back then it was just like you jumped into a show doing whatever the hell.
Instagram wasn't really a thing. You didn't really showcase things like that on Instagram. I think it was only just starting. So it wasn't something, there wasn't that immediate pressure there. And whether you like it or not, it's always going to be some form of pressure, isn't it, from social media? So we did it because we wanted to do it. And we wanted to have a good time, and we just jumped in and we had fun.
There's so much preparation around it now in terms of like these first timers getting posing coaches a year out from a show. Like, bro, I didn't even know I was going to compete a year before the show. I decided 8 weeks before, let me jump on stage.
Bro, like 4-week diet and just jump on.
Yeah, 4 weeks. There's guys that I knew. Oh, what is going on, guys? And me and Sam are back for episode number 3 of Physique Talks. If you thought we were going away, we're not going nowhere. We're here to stay, and we're doing this every single week. So keep making sure you tune in. If you've got any ideas about what you want us to talk about, just drop us a message on Instagram, drop a comment down in the comment section, and we'll make sure that we get onto that at some point, because we want to make sure we are the voices of UK bodybuilding and we talk about everything from our perspective as amateurs, because I feel like sometimes that's lacking a little bit. So we want to be super personable with this and tell our stories, because I think storytelling helps more than just telling you what to do and what not to do, because it's our full experiences. And I feel like I've been through a lot of stuff. I don't know about you, Sam, but have you got stories about your first experience?
Too many stories, bro. Too many stories. Too many stories to cover. Yeah.
We got quite a few topic headings here. We really just want to run over the first timers experience from right from the start, from what motivated us to compete, picking a show, category, mental preparation, support system, working with a coach, picking a coach, challenges, importance of posing, nerves, anxiety, backstage experience, emotions experience while on stage, highs and lows of competition results, the overall impact of the experience, post-competition recovery, the lessons learned from the first competition and where we went from that first show. So that's what we want to run through today. So if you're a first timer, this will be very, very valuable for you to tune into and kind of take some notes down and do things wrong that we did wrong, because we probably could have maximized our progress 10 times or enhanced our experience if we had something like this out that we could have paid attention to and wrote notes down from. So let's kick it off with the decision to even do a bodybuilding competition. Like, did you were just a guy training in the gym and you were just like, yeah, I'm going to compete now? Or like, what was it for you?
Yeah, man, it was always like the first motivation for me anyway to get into the gym was, you know, if you watch Pumping Iron, I'm guessing you watched Pumping Iron.
Yeah. I did I did that in uni. I did a full analysis. I studied.
Oh, did you? Oh, sick. Yeah, that literally, bro. One of my mates who was at the time like really into training and bodybuilding, he showed me it and I watched it and I was just hooked. I was like, I want to be like Arnold. I want to be like Franco. I want to be like those guys. So that was like the main drive for me to go and train and ultimately bodybuild. But basically, my mate, he was competing. He'd already done a show, and we had like a little bit of a rivalry going on. So there was a show coming up that he did the previous year, and I was like, well, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna place better than him. So I entered the show, and yeah, that was it. Basically, my bodybuilding journey started from there. The main focus was like trying to beat my friend who was already a bodybuilder, and then obviously like copy Arnold and Franco. Like I thought I'd get on stage and look exactly like Arnold did with the poses and everything. I was like, had that like idea in my head.
Was that then?
That was I think 2014. I was 18. Yeah, that was, bro. I'd literally first show. I was like natural, didn't have a clue what I was doing. I just like picked a calorie target and like ate within the macros of the calorie target, because like back then, like if it fits your macros was quite big. Like it just started. So I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to pick this macro target. I'm just going to eat whatever I want in the macro target. So I was like showing off, saying like, oh, I'm eating chocolate bars and I'm losing weight.
I had a big argument with one guy on Instagram. He was like a PT person. It looked like shit.
Yeah.
He was pushing if it fits your macros, but he was also pushing intermittent fasting at the same
Oh,
time.
really?
So he would do if it fits your macros and intermittent fasting at the same time. So he'd have one meal a day, and that one meal would have like fucking 200 grams of protein in, and then
Oh,
it would just have one plate of just like a shit ton of food. And I'm like, bro, you can't do that. Like, and he was like, yeah, can it fits my like, yeah.
mate.
And then we started arguing about uh he sent me a screenshot and he was like, "Oh, this chicken from McDonald's is the same as like your chicken and rice or whatever." I was like, "I promise you, you cannot get shredded for a show by eating chicken and chicken sandwiches. I promise you,
Well,
that's not going to happen." But he was so adamant. Oh, it's in the macros, so I'm going to get shredded. But then I was like, "I promise you, it's not the same thing. Like you've got to think about the micronutrients and all
yeah.
these." Involved in it, like you can't just smash one meal a day and it's a McChicken burger, and just because it's in your macros, you're gonna get peeled. Like your body you'll start to look shit.
Bro, that was the problem back then, though, because it was all the range, and this was like, oh, you can eat chocolate bars, and they were preaching. People were preaching like, oh, you can eat this and get lean. People were like jumping on it and eating probably 90% shit food. Oh, sorry, I swear, I don't want to swear into too early. They were eating like 90% bad food, and then the 10% was like chicken breast or something like that. And then that was all the range, bro. And I used to think that. I used to think, oh yeah, you can, but you can't. Like learning that now, looking back, you've got to keep your diet whole foods. It's just there's no argument with that. But
I'm still on whole foods now, even post prep. I don't obviously off plan. I might have. I think all I had in my off plan last week was obviously I had the meal, but then I was like, right, I can have a little bit of a dessert or whatever. I just put a couple of squares of white chocolate in my bowl of oats, and I had 50 grams more in my bowl of oats than I usually would have, and that was it for me. That's what I wanted as my thing. But I'm still on whole foods now. Still no Cocoa Pops or anything. I like to keep that Cocoa Pop hype until my calories are super high to the point where I feel like post workout, okay, I'm going to have Cocoa Pops now because it's just going to be easier for me to eat. But I just try to keep it whole foods for as long as possible.
Do you think, Dudley, that's a bit of a fad that maybe potential competitors and first times are getting into because it's so popular now to eat squares bars and Cocoa Pops? Do you think that that's left an impression on these people coming up and doing they kind of disregard the whole foods because there's a hype over these cereals and stuff? Do you think that's a bit of a thing at the moment?
Yeah, 100%. It wasn't my first ever competition, but I went from a competition one time, rebounded out of it with the Cocoa Pops and stuff like that, and I just looked. I ended up getting fat too quick, and I just looked shit. There's no reason for it at all. So since that prep, I've then post show, I just focus on whole foods, and I won't input Cocoa Pops until I get to like start pushing calories where I'm sat in the day and I'm like, okay, it's going to be tough for me to get these carbs in now, so I'm going to have to just have a big bowl of Cocoa Pops for me to be able to get the carbs in. Utilizing those at the right time I think is really important, rather than just throwing them in straight after your competition, because you're allowed to throw them in straight after your competition. As much as I've got hazelnut Cocoa Pops, the special edition ones in my cupboard, they'll get smashed soon. So yeah, anyway, my decision to start bodybuilding was people just used to say, oh yeah, you should compete, and I was just like, I just kept hearing that over and over again. Oh, have you doing a competition? You're doing a competition, and then eventually you just end up doing a competition, don't you? You start falling into it, learning more. Let me turn this off one sec. People keep messaging me. Eventually you get to the point where everyone's telling you, why have you not competed, or you should compete, and you're just like, all right, then okay, I'll do it. But men's physique was my main first thing that I saw, and I used to see Jeremy Buendia, and I'm like, yeah, that's how I want to look, because I was that kind of pretty boy kind of thing. I wasn't really into like big bodybuilding. Yeah, I said, yeah, they look all right, but that's not what I want to look like. I want to look like this model beach guy. And then obviously it's evolved from there, and I'm like, I just want to get wham. But that was never the original goal to get even as big as I am now. I probably would have not wanted to do that back in the days. My first original goal was to just be a men's physique athlete. And I remember people asking me, oh, you're going to move into bodybuilding, this and that. I was like, no, I'll always be a men's physique athlete. Like I'll never move from men's physique. And that was around the time Sadiq moved from men's physique to classic. That was that early on when it like first really started, and people was like, "Oh, will you ever transition from men's physique?" And I was like, "I'm always going to be a men's physique guy, always." And obviously, it evolves from there because you just want to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So, but yeah, the behind the decision was people was just saying you should do it. So I was like, right, I'll give it a shot. Then and I'd see pictures on Instagram. So I'd go on like the UKBFF page and I'd look at like who came first, and I'm like, yo, I can beat him.
Yeah.
I can beat him. If this guy's winning, I can win. So that's what I was doing. I was looking at these shows and I was like, I can beat him. So then I threw myself into it and did my first show. So picking that first show, it was all I was looking at was like UKBFF because I just saw that's where the top quality of competitors were at the time. So that's why I picked the UKBFF shows. We didn't have no PCA first timers or nothing back then. It was literally just UKBFF junior men's physique that everyone used to do. And when I say everyone, there's like 50 guys on stage at the British Championships. Like,
man, it is crazy times. Yeah.
What was your first Fed?
So I did basically the first actual show I did was like a local show. It was in Peterborough. It was called like Mr. Peterborough or something. It was a local show that was held there every year. So it wasn't an actual Fed. But the first actual Fed I did was IBFA. I don't know if you remember IBFA. They were like a smaller sort of Fed. But yeah, that's the first actual Fed. I never actually got around to doing UKBFF. My mate did, because I didn't actually get around to doing it but literally by the time I got back onto the stage, like Two Bros had already taken over, so I never actually did one. But you know that show, the British Finals you were saying about last week, Dudley, I think that was the one that one of my mates did. Was it 2017?
2017.
Yeah, because that was a mad show, because I remember being there and I was like watching everyone. But yeah, man, I wanted to do UKBFF, but after that, I think I don't know, because
that was the peak of the UKBFF. Yeah, 2018 was done, so I'm so happy I'm actually getting on that last year.
Yeah, man.
The vibe. Like, we'll talk about that more later in the video, about
of course,
experience and like who you meet and all that kind of stuff. But that was a vibe. Like, I don't know, it just felt different. It felt different. It was at that. Everyone was at the hotel, this one hotel, and you were just walking around, and it was just such like an experience, I think.
Yeah, man.
I think that's very, very important for your first timers experience. Picking a show that's going to give you the best experience. Into the production value, just camaraderie around the event, and you don't want to go to an event that's really, really cliquey as well. There's a lot of places you can get into and people are cliquey. You just want to go for fun, and that's why I like to put maybe people in PCA first timers, because everyone in that is a first timer. Everyone in that whole show is a first timer. It's not just your class or whatever. Like, everyone backstage, everyone going for registration, tanning, you're all doing these all exactly at the first. Like, there's no one that's been there before. So I think that eases the mind a lot. So when you're picking a federation as a first timer, I would say I would advise just go for a whole show that's based on first timers as your first experience.
Yeah, I agree with Dudley there, because sometimes as well in the smaller feds or the smaller shows, like local shows, you'll always get someone that is not a first timer turn up. They'll take the win, and they'll just ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah,
like, so many times, every small show I've entered, there was a guy that like won. He won an overall a few weeks before, but that was his first show and he won the overall. Then he did another first timers and he tried to go for the overall again the next week. It's like, come on, man.
So you can do, say, like a PCA first timers, but then you can also do the Two Bros first timers, because Two Bros, their first timers kind of requirement is, someone reminded me about this morning because I put it on my story and someone messaged me saying like this, and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. So with Two Bros, you can have competed before, just not competed with the IFBB, with the NPC Pro League or whatever they want to call it nowadays. So if you've never competed with the NPC, you can enter a Two Bros first timers show. So I can do 50 PCA shows and still go into a Two Bros first timers show. So that's something that you have to think about as well. You might have guys that have, because he said he had some guy that won about 5 shows before that. but he's never done an IFBB Pro League show. I mean, God, it's so confusing with the terminology. This is something that you first timers have to get used to, but it's kind of. But NPC, IFBB, Elite Leagues, these are all the federations. We should probably break down federations, to be fair.
Yeah, that would be a good one, actually, bro. Yeah, that would be a good one. Well,
so let's have a look at that real quick. Let's just backtrack before we go any further, because you've heard us probably say feds about 50 times, and you're like, what the hell is a fed? I thought it was police. I thought it was police. So how would you kind of describe federation?
So I would say like you've got local shows that aren't affiliated to any feds. They're quite rare nowadays. Did you ever see any of them?
Yeah, they were always about the town halls and stuff like that.
Stuff like that. That's like your first level. And then you've got your kind of lower level feds. You've got IBFA. I don't know if NABA is still going. They were really big, NABA.
Back in
they were big. But now I don't know, I've not heard much from NABA. And then I'd say like, then you've got like Fitex and is it NFM UK?
Yeah, and UKUP as well. UKUP.
You've got those feds. They're like, I'd say they're not too bad for a first timer to jump into.
Yeah. I've actually got a guy jumping in a UKUP. I've got 2 guys jumping in a UKUP show within the next 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a good first timers experience as well.
And then you've obviously got, I'd say then you've got PCA, which is obviously a step above that, and you've got like the realms of the PCA Pro League and everything, and then obviously you've got NPC. Basically, 2 bros is the.
We get confusing. It's like, what you say, man? IFBB 2 bros.
Basically, you have the IFBB, which is the biggest league, the biggest bodybuilding league. They have their subdivisions, and basically. There's also the NPC, which is affiliated under the IFBB, which is National Physique Committee Worldwide. And then they have their federations underneath representing the NPC, which is in the UK, which is 2 bros.
Okay.
So 2 bros can technically be called the IFBB because they represent the IFBB.
Yeah.
And it used to be UKBFF that Dudley was talking about. They used to represent the IFBB, but now they have their IFBB Pro League. The IFBB Elite or something.
IFBB Elite, yeah. So there's the IFBB Elite, and then there's like NPC, but there's only one route to like the pro card that we know as the one that can get you to the Olympia, and that is with NPC. So even though the IFBB over here is called IFBB, you can't get to the Olympia via that. You get to the Olympia via NPC. So you get to, God, this is so confusing. you become an IFBB Pro by competing with NPC. You become IFBB Elite, which is something totally different, by competing with the IFBB, with the UKUP.
Used to be
UKBFF.
Yeah, that's it.
But basically, if you want in a pro card, you go through the NPC route. If you're looking at IFBB Elite, which do decent shows around Europe with prize money and stuff like that, then you would go through like UKBFF and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I hope that kind of clears it up. But as you can see, we're experienced in this, and it's still a little bit all over the place when we have to talk about it and try and break it down. It makes sense in our heads, though, like in our heads, but on paper, it's a bit confusing.
Hopefully that's cleared it up for anyone that's wondering like what the feds are and stuff like that. So it's but like Dudley said, if we could go back in time, I would prioritize maybe doing a better federation, because I didn't have a clue at the time, so I was just going off basically what my coach said. But going back, like Dudley was saying, if you have access to a PCA first timers, they're really good because they are literally, it is your first time on stage, and everyone on that stage, it'll be their first time as well. So that's a really good one to do. But anyway, Dudley, what we were saying about the first shows and stuff, our first shows, like how did you feel? What did you do to mentally prepare for it? Did you feel like you had to have this big psych going on, or did you just jump into it and have fun? And
I feel like back in them days, Instagram wasn't as much of a thing as it is now. So in terms of mental preparation, we didn't really get in our own heads as much. We just we was able to focus on ourselves that little bit more. Whereas now, because Instagram's so prominent, a lot of these athletes or first timers feel like they have to put first timer in the bio and share the whole journey, and then check in with seeing other people that might be doing the same show. Back in them days, Instagram wasn't popping as it was now. So we were just really focusing on ourselves. So I think mental preparation, it was just me. Am I good enough? Am I doing everything right? Am I doing everything that I can? But I was so clueless that I think mental preparation wasn't really too much of a thing. It's definitely something that I push onto my first time as athletes now, because it's more prominent, and there's a lot more pressure, I'd say, on first timers. But back then it was just like you jumped into a show doing whatever the hell. So I don't think there was as much pressure back then being a first timer as there is now. There's a lot more eyes on what's going on. So there definitely is a lot more pressure now that you have to deal with. So yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's literally the same as you, Dudley. That Instagram wasn't really a thing. You didn't really showcase things like that on Instagram. I think it was only just starting. So it wasn't something, there wasn't that immediate pressure there. And whether you like it or not, it's always going to be some form of pressure, isn't there, from social media. So like you said, it was kind of just like we did it because we wanted to do it. And we wanted to have a good time, and we just jumped in and we had fun. There wasn't, it's funny because it actually, thinking about the shows back then, you didn't really have that sort of pressure, did you? You just kind of thought, well, I'm doing this show and I'm jumping into it. Yeah, like there wasn't like, oh, I've got to, you know, I'm showcasing things on Instagram, showcasing my look. Should I post this? Should I post that? There was none of that. It was just, did you find you had any sort of anxiety leading up to the show or anything like that, any nerves or anything? Or
no, because I didn't know the standards. I didn't know what I was jumping into. I didn't even know what I was into. I didn't have a clue what I was getting into. So I just jumped up on stage. My posing was horrible. Everything was like, there's so much preparation around it now, in terms of like these first timers getting posing coaches a year out from a show. Like, bro, I didn't even know I was going to compete a year before the show. I decided 8 weeks before, let me jump on stage.
Bro, like 4-week diet and just jump on.
Yeah, 4 weeks. There's guys that I knew. Marcus Privet, who's fucking sick, is still doing men's physique now. I think he's working with Jace. I don't know still, but yeah, I remember him saying he only did like a 4-week diet, and that was back then. And that doesn't happen no more. There's so much more preparation around it. People are getting posing coaches a year before the shows even start. People are even jumping on board with coaches to go through like a little bit of an off season and understand the body a little bit more. But back then it was just like, let me jump into this show real quick, and there wasn't as much pressure. So but it is something that I try and push onto my athletes now, like to be mentally prepared, because the game has changed so much and there is a lot more pressure on it.
Did you how did you actually find your first show? Like what did you was it a big was the category big, or was it, how did you place and stuff like that? What was your actual first show like?
I think there was about 6 guys. There was about 6 guys, and I placed second, which I wasn't happy about. I wish I found the video. Actually, I'm gonna have to find that video. Maybe I'll overlay it. So if I find this video, I'm gonna overlay it now. This is what I said after the show when I placed second. All right, cool. That's played now. So yeah, I wasn't happy about placing second, but it got me a qualification to the British Champs, and all I really wanted to do was come higher than the guy that placed first in that regional. That was my only main target. As long as I beat the guy that beat me in the regional, I was happy. And like I said, I think there were about fucking 50 guys on stage, and I ended up taking third. And I was so confused. I was so confused about how I got third, because I was just trying to maybe even get top 15. So like getting third for me, I was over the moon. And the guys that beat me was Isaac Francis and Ross Allen.
Yeah.
Both now pro. And I had the conversation with Isaac, because we did the Athlete Insight podcast thing, and I remember he was fuming at finishing second, and then there was me in third, like yeah. There's him in second, like, oh, for fuck's sake, and I'm getting third, and I'm absolutely buzzing. But yeah, what was your first show that?
Yeah, that's I think, like, what you're saying though, I think sometimes now people get so caught up on the placing, but like say back then you were like buzzing, weren't you? If you did like to that level. But yeah, my first show was it was junior, because do you know we were saying about picking the right category, but obviously you went on to the men's physique side, and I chose bodybuilding, but obviously you basically, if you are junior, you're going to do the junior categories. You don't go straight up into the men's categories. But yeah, the junior bodybuilding, I remember there was like 7 guys there. And I was walked into the venue. I was like, yeah, I'm going to win this. I'm going to look like Arnold on stage. I went backstage, saw this guy pumping up that was like, he looked about 30. And my mate was like, yeah, that guy's a junior. I was like, he can't be a junior. And so I went up to him. I was like, oh, mate, are you doing men's bodybuilding, mate? And he was like, no, I'm junior. And I was just like, oh, my face just dropped because, mate, he was stacked, absolutely stacked. And there was me, like natural, dieted for like 6 weeks, thinking I was going to win the show. And saw him, and it was kind of like a reality check. But I got 3rd place though out of 7, and most of those guys were enhanced. So that kind of, I had the little natty card, and I was like, yeah, you know what? If I can do this naturally, then I should be all right. Like, yeah. even though I got 3rd, I wasn't particularly happy with the look. You know, like when you do the show and you place and you think, okay, I might actually be all right at this, you know, because it's your first show, you didn't really have any expectations. But yeah, that was, and ever since then, obviously, I took 2 years out then started competing with a coach and stuff like that. But
yeah. So you did your own prep?
I did my own prep for the first show. Yeah, I say did my own prep, but I didn't have a clue, bro. Do you know? Is it is it Lyle McDonald?
Sure.
No, not. There's basically a guy that was quite big in the natural scene, and he basically put his peak week protocol online, and I literally just followed his peak week protocol. That was like my thing. It was like a subway before you get on stage and like water loading and all this. And I was like, I'll just follow that. It should be fine.
I did have a coach for my first show.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
My mum knew this guy. My mum knew this one guy that she was friends with when she was a kid. And she was like, oh, I've seen him on Facebook. He does bodybuilding or whatever. So obviously she messages him. I ended up getting a job at his gym. Wasn't a great gym, but it was like my first time just working on reception, bits and bats. So he was like, right, I'll help you with the prep. And he just didn't know what he was doing.
No.
He did not know what he was doing. He was like, no, you can't do cardio. He was like, no cardio. He's not telling me what to eat. He's just kind of looking at me and just saying, yeah, you're looking good. But he's not really telling me what to eat. He's just saying, right, maybe don't have this much carbs or whatever. But I was kind of managing it myself, just with a bit of advice on the side. It wasn't really coaching. But then he was telling me, like, I can't do cardio and this and that. So I'm like, I want to do cardio, though. Like, I'm not lean enough. He's like, you don't have to do cardio to get shredded. I'm like, to the level that I want to get, yeah, I'm going to have to do cardio. So now I remember one morning, like, I started secretly doing cardio. And then one morning he catches me doing cardio. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, look, honestly, like, you're not really doing nothing for me. You're not telling me what to do. There's no structure here. I want to do cardio because I'm seeing all these other. I'm watching Phil Heath on his little documentary on what is it? Generation Iron.
Oh yeah.
Stairmaster in his basement and stuff like that. I'm watching all this, yeah. And I'm like, yo, why am I not doing cardio? So then I'm like, right, I'm gonna get on the Stairmaster. And he was like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're not. I want to do the cardio, like I'm not looking as how I want to look. And then that just turned into an argument. And then obviously I was supposed to be doing a shift and I just walked out. I said, look, I'm not working here no more. Like you're not doing what I need you to do as a coach, and you're just all over the place. So then I just walked out of there. I think I was about 4 weeks out from the British Championships at that point. So I'd done the regionals with him. And then I went to Ricky Moore. So Ricky Moore taught me a lot. Ricky Moore, British, he's done bodybuilding, he's done powerlifting, all that kind of stuff. He's a super nice guy as well. And he brought me in for the last 4 weeks to the British Championships, and he had me grafting. And when I mean like proper cardio, proper diet, like that was my first experience of like a proper bodybuilding diet and cardio and prep and stuff like that. So I learned so much from him in that beginning phase, and just like how to nail in. And Ricky's like an old school bodybuilder, like a proper old school bodybuilder. Yeah. So it's like your chicken, rice, dry food, nothing like that. I was grafting, and yeah, it was a big graft, but it was fun, and it taught me a lot about like proper bodybuilding. It was just chicken and rice and eggs and stuff like that, and a nice bunch of cardio as well. But yeah, brought me in good for that British Championships. and I learned a lot from getting a coach that first time. Do you think it's necessary for someone to get a coach for the first time? Because obviously we've had different experiences here.
I think, like we're talking about changes, like in how the game is now. I feel like it's definitely beneficial. It is beneficial to have a coach, because like even the coach that you had, I think, Dudley, back then, it was like, if you know a guy in your gym that's dabbled in bodybuilding or has done shows themselves, they're like the guy to go to. So our options back then were limited because Instagram wasn't really a thing. Online coaching didn't have a massive, it wasn't really a thing, was it, back in those days? So we would have to go to someone that we thought was knowledgeable. And obviously me and my first show, I literally prepped myself, didn't have a clue what I was doing. So in hindsight, if I had a coach now, say even with someone with like my capacity of knowledge that I know now, if I had that guiding me back then, could have saved like 2-3 years worth of progress probably.
Yeah,
so
that's why I try to get onto all the young guys now. I'm like, yes, yeah. I didn't do this, but I've wasted so many years, and I don't want to use those years.
That's it. No, but that's it. So if you could go back, Dudley, imagine with your knowledge you have now, that young Dudley that started, imagine if you could coach him now. You could literally have him winning regionals, going to pro qualifiers in like 2-3 years, couldn't you? Easily. That's but it's like, so and I think as well, that's why finding the right coach and the good coach to guide you that's been there and done that themselves, I feel like that is very valuable, because we've got so much experience in actually doing it, not just talking about it and reading studies and having other people as the guinea pigs. But that's, I was going to say as well, Dudley, like my actual first coach, this is when did you start PEDs? Like what did he get you on the PD protocol, the first guy that you?
I did. It was after the Train by JP app dropped. So Train by JP app dropped. Jordan Peters started releasing videos about stuff, and he released a video about your first cycle, which was like 250 milligram of tests each week. So obviously listened to that, did my research on that, and then that's what I went off. So I think I was about 22 years old, 26 now. So it's not been too long, but there was a decent amount of knowledge when I first started, and I just followed what Jordan Peters says.
But that's probably better than, because some coaches back in the day, like my first coach, man, he got me on some stupid cycle.
What, you're talking 500 milligram of test? That was like the
that's the best, yeah, bro. Back then, that was like any coach, just like 2 mil a test, which was Sustanon, which was 250 mig. So yeah, you'd go 500 milligram of Sustanon. Have you ever heard of Tritren?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
That was a big one back in the day. That's like literally a mix of all the esters of Tren at 100 milligrams. So he said 2 mil of that, which is 200 milligram of Tren. And then, can you remember they used to call them NAP 50s, the oxys, oxymethylone, anadrol?
I use Superdrol.
Yeah, not super. These are called. They used to call them oxys or NAP 50s, and they were like the strongest oral steroid you can take. I think the only oral steroid that's been directly linked to cancer. And they were like, yeah, just drop one of them in every day. So like, my first cycle from a coach was 500 milligram of test, 200 milligram of Tren, and then one of those oxys a day. And that was my first cycle. Like, that was given to a 23-year-old kid. Like, don't get me wrong, I did blow up. I went from like 13 stone to 17 stone. But like, this is the date. Like that back then, I thought this is normal. Yeah. But looking back now, 500 milligram of test, I don't do that. I'd never go past that. Like, I'd never go past 300.
Yeah, I've been chilling on 300 for years.
Yeah, bro. I all my off seasons now have been basically TRT, 120 milligram of test. Like, looking back and using Tren in an off season as well. Like, man, and using oxy, like strong oral steroids. Like, this is where having a knowledgeable coach for your first show does come in handy, because that could have, I don't know, it could have caused long-term damage.
Yeah.
It's very important to have a coach that really does know what they're doing on that side of things, to save a lot of damage in the future. Because no joke.
I say that my first cycle was when I was 22 or whatever, but that was my first proper cycle. But that first coach, he put me on Superdrol for like 4 weeks. So that was just the orals. It was just Superdrol. It was like, I can't remember how much of it was, but it was like 1 tablet of Superdrol every day or whatever. But that was my first. But I don't count that. It was like 4 weeks of Super
Yeah,
Jaw.
it's not a lot. Yeah.
Was it necessary? Have I used Super Jaw since? No. Like, yeah, it just threw me off Super Jaw. So that was actually my first ever touch of anything.
It's probably a red flag for someone if your coach is getting you to take all of that for your first cycle, something, that's probably a red flag.
Yeah, you need to be careful with it. You need to be careful with it. I had something else to say. I can't remember what I was going to say. What was I going to say? Can't remember. Let's move on to the next point anyway now, because we're like 40 minutes in.
Oh man.
Topic number 4: the support system and the role of family and friends. Is this going to have to be another 2-parter?
Might be, man.
The support system, the role of family and friends throughout the process. So, what did your family think about when you first was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what I'm doing?
To be honest, I think they thought I was joking or something. Like when I said I want to get on stage and be a bodybuilder. To be fair, my mum's always been supportive of me. Whatever I do, I could choose to be a ballet dancer, a bin man, whatever. She would be supportive of me. So from that aspect, she kind of was like, yeah, go for it. But my dad, he's very, no, you need to just go and work and get a proper job and stop spending so much time in the gym. He didn't really understand. He'd never really understood why I did it, So I guess my support network was a bit smaller, but the only benefit I had was obviously my friends did it and my friends trained and they competed themselves. So they were the big support network in kind of pushing me to do it. Whereas my own family, not so much. How about you, Dudley? Did you have what were your family?
So at that point, that's what I was going to mention. But I guess it kind of the PD side of it kind of translates a little bit onto this support topic as well. So I was in a relationship at the time. I was living with my girlfriend's parents. So I had a little stack of Anavar in the cupboard, and I found it. And obviously, our mum's googling everything. Yeah. So I get this shout. I'm like, Dudley. I'm like, oh. So I go downstairs, like, what's this tablet thing? You're not having this in my house and stuff like that. He was like, my daughter is not seeing a guy who's doing steroids and stuff like that. And then obviously she then starts arguing with her mom and she's like, yeah, it's nothing. It's this and that. Like, it's just these tablets. And I'm just there stood in the background like, fuck, like, I don't really know what to do. It's so awkward, isn't it? Like, I'm getting looking off my girlfriend's mom saying she's not allowed to be with a guy like me. And I'm like, fuck. Sake, like, you're not doing this in my house. And I actually started my first ever cycle when I was in that house as well. I think maybe did I? And I wasn't allowed to inject, so I had to go to my auntie's house to pin. Every pin day I'd have to go to my auntie's house because she wouldn't let me pin in that house just in case a mum got any notion of it or whatever. So then when I actually did start for my first cycle, I had to go to my auntie's house. But yeah, that kind of brings it onto the support system. I didn't really have one. My parents didn't really understand it. I think my parents were out of the country. My parents moved to Saudi Arabia. My mum moved for work, so my parents weren't really around. So they were a support system there for me during that kind of first little phase, I don't think. And then I just had my girlfriend's parents, who obviously they were just so general pop. So they didn't really understand what was going on. And I don't think they were willing to understand what was going on. So yeah, it was just me and me really, and whoever I was chatting to around the gym.
It's a shame, isn't it? Like, people don't really want to understand it. Like, they just immediately brand it, don't they? They put you on a pedestal, and they think like, oh, I don't know, it's weird. Maybe like if you were doing football or rugby, they probably would have supported you. Yeah. Like, I find like it's with bodybuilding, it's a bit taboo still, isn't it? It's like you either.
At that time it was like it's opening up a lot over the last years, but like even just like we're talking about like this, like it was ages ago, but bodybuilding's only been booming for a short period of time. We're talking about even like 5-6 years ago here, it was not what it is today, and there was still a lot of taboo around it.
There was and stigma and everything like that, but it's probably a really hard time for like people like us that were young bodybuilders coming up, because I feel like it's definitely I wouldn't say easier, but there's so much more acceptance and accessibility and people opening up about talking about pets, and even what we're doing now on the podcast, talking about our experiences. I don't know about you, Dudley, but I didn't have anyone doing that when, back in the day when we were on YouTube. It was just like Rich Piana and like people like that.
Yeah, but like you can watch these podcasts and you can drop us a message on Instagram and we're going to chat to you and we can be your support system if you want us to be your support system. Like there's such a community around now that's a lot more. There was community back then, but it wasn't as easy as accessible because of all the online stuff. So
that's actually, I think that's a point that we're making as well, Dudley, on the list. It's like the people that you meet at the shows and stuff, that was like your only access to people in the industry, wasn't it? You had to meet them at the shows.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can drop someone a message. You can drop the promoters a message on Instagram if you want. So I feel like that's probably a positive. The fact that so many people, like even us, Dudley, for example, if we'd have met at that show, the show that we did together, like back then, Instagram wasn't really a thing. You wouldn't really like link properly. You just see them maybe at the next show. Whereas now, we got each other on Instagram and we started talking more, and now we've developed the podcast. I feel like that's probably a benefit of having the social media side of things now, isn't it? Yeah. You can have more of a support system from people that aren't local to you or people you don't, wouldn't have found out otherwise. So
that's definitely a topic that we're going to get onto talking about. I think that's going to have to come in episode number 2. So if you want to hear more about that, then come back for episode number 2, because it's looking like we're going to have to do 2 versions of this, like we're going to be dropping number 2 of the costs of bodybuilding next week as well. So the next topic we want to really go to is the challenges and setbacks during that first prep. I think I kind of talked about mine with the cardio issue. My coach not wanting me to do cardio and I'm having to sneak doing cardio. But in terms of anything else, I'm not sure if there was any major challenges and setbacks. Like I said, I think I don't know where I was. Yeah, no, it was my second prep. I was in my girlfriend's house actually with her parents. So my first prep, it was pretty much smooth just because there wasn't any pressure. So I don't know what I can say about that. But in terms of setbacks and challenges that people might face, what do you think people will face nowadays?
I suppose nowadays is, I think one thing when you're starting out, I think the biggest thing is like adherence to the plan and stuff. So if you're just starting out and you've been given this regimen by your coach, I think the tendency when you're maybe 3 or 4 weeks out, depending on obviously your mindset, you might have that thing like you do slightly go off plan or you divulge off the plan. Like I don't know about you, Dudley, but when I did my first prep with a coach, I was 2 weeks out, right? I was 2 weeks out, and one of my friends at the time bought me a bag of little Kinder sweets for when I finished the show. And my coach was like, right, I'll give you you have a little refeed or a cheat meal on that day. So I had a burger, and then I thought, okay, I've had my little cheat meal. I'm going to go sleep. I looked under my bed. I saw the Kinders there, and I smashed the whole bag. It was like a kilo of little Kinder sweets, and I smashed the whole bag. And but it was like once I had one, that I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
So I think like it might be different now. I feel like it might be different now because there's so much out there with discipline and I feel like people, it's not going to be as much of a problem. Back then, like I didn't have.
Yeah, I don't think we really cared too much back then.
Like, you didn't care. Yeah,
on the shows, like there is now, there's so much pressure on first-time athletes to just actually perform and look well. Whereas like back then, we just jumped into a show and we look good. Yeah, we looked all right. Like that was it. We stepped on stage, but nowadays people, they don't want to step on stage until they feel like they're 100% ready, and there's so much pressure on it. We didn't have none of that pressure. We was just like, yeah, whatever, it is what it is.
That's exactly
my own diet. I smashed a box of crackers, so I never went. I didn't cheat on my diet in terms of like massively, but I was like, oh, crackers, it's carbs in it. I'll be all right. So it's not too bad in terms of.
But I feel like Dudley, like sometimes you've got to go through that to then become all in and 100%. When you get to that level, if that makes sense. Like people now, like you said, they're trying to compare themselves
all in from day one nowadays.
Yeah, like 100%. Yeah, but it's like that part of the bodybuilding process is making mistakes and learning from that. But like, if you're trying to be all in and compare yourself to like a high level amateur or even a pro, you're going to put way too much pressure on yourself, aren't you? Mentally, you're not going to enjoy it. I think part of the process is making mistakes and learning from that, and looking back and thinking, wow, like that was, you just learn from that. But I guess that's just the difference between back then and now. There is that extra pressure from social media. Like a first timer, not to say you should, don't cheat on your diet, but that I think that's probably maybe one thing. Like adherence would be a challenge even nowadays.
Yeah.
Because how many people do you hear do that? They cheat on the diet, or they fuck up the diet, and then they sack off the prep or whatever.
I think one of the biggest challenges, I think, as well, bringing in that whole social media aspect, is the mental aspect of it is a lot more challenging now.
Yeah.
I had a guy who he's just self-destructed like a week out from the show and just decided to fuck up everything and eat a shit ton of food. And it's just because he didn't feel mentally ready to step on stage. So he just self-destructed, and he was just a week out, tried to get a check-in from him, and he's just like, yeah, I've been smashing a shit ton of food. I fucked it.
Yeah,
and that wasn't anything physically. It wasn't that he wasn't ready, because he was ready. It was just mentally he wasn't in the right place to actually step on stage the following week. So it was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'll just ruin my prep. Just then I don't have to face stepping on stage. And it's sad to see, because we went through so much in terms of like what he went through, and grafting his ass off to a week out, him just mentally not being there, not physically. He was physically ready, he was healed, but mentally he wasn't ready to actually step on stage. So I think mental preparation nowadays, because of all this external stuff that we have, it has to be a number one priority, and it will be a setback. It will be a challenge, should I say.
I guess that takes us back to the cost of bodybuilding as well, Dudley. That's a cost that you have to weigh in. You've got to make sure that your mentality is there. It's going to cost you a piece of yourself. You're going to have to make a sacrifice, but you've got to make sure that is there. Otherwise, like you say, you might have a great physique, you might look on the money, but you could bottle it last minute just because of that, just because of the mindset and the pressure. So it's definitely something to bear in mind for anyone.
What about moving on to like posing and stuff now? Because my posing, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And my coach didn't have a clue what he was doing either. Now looking back at it, so we used to do sessions in, that first coach I said he didn't really know what he was doing. We used to do sessions, and he's getting me to run through the bodybuilding poses. I'm like, bro, I'm doing men's physique. He was like, yeah, but you need to know these poses, these bodybuilding poses. I don't need to know these bodybuilding poses. And then he'd try and run through men's physique, but he was an old school bodybuilder guy. He didn't have a clue what men's physique posing was. So my posing was all over the place. And then I met up with one guy that I did meet with. Instagram was kind of a little bit there. So I did meet one guy who he just did a small show, and I went and I just messaged him, and then we got a session and we did some posing together, freshened up my posing a little bit. And it was all right, but it wasn't great. And I was still just kind of winging it. So posing preparation is key. Do get in as early as you can, especially the standard that you're expected to be at nowadays. You wasn't expected to be amazing at posing and stuff back then. Like I said, we just jumped on stage. It wasn't as expected to be solid at posing, but now everyone's getting posing coaches so early on. You've got an expectation to pose properly.
Yeah, that's very true, actually, Dudley. Like you say, back in the day, it was normal, especially for first time or whatever. It was normal to be crap at posing. That was like, oh, well, he's new to it. But like say now, people are getting posing coaches way before, so they will be posing like very well on stage, even as a first timer. Whereas we didn't really have that back in the day. But I'll tell you one thing: I used to watch YouTube videos of like all the old school guys posing, like Samir Banal and Frank Zane and stuff like that, and that. You can draw some inspiration from that if you just study and analyze how they move. You can do it, but like you say, nowadays with all the knowledge other people have and all the posing coaches, etc., you really want to make posing a priority. Just remember that posing is a priority. Like nowadays, more so than ever. If someone next to you can pose better than you, they might just shun you out, even if you have potentially a better physique. If your posing's up to par, you might lose some points now. So, yeah, it's definitely something to. But how mad is it though, Dudley? Like you said, times have changed where a first timer now has nutrition coach, they've got a posing coach. You know, they're getting ready like 20, 30 weeks out. They're doing all this stuff. Back in the day, we were like, oh yeah, cool, just jump in and do it.
The show, no preparation. Yeah. 8 weeks away. It's all right, man. I'll be all right. I'll just smash your diet, smash your cardio. I don't even know how to pose, but I'll be all right.
Yeah,
it's changed so much, and it's not even a long time ago. It's like this is like years ago. Still, like it's evolved so much. Do
you think though, Dudley? Do you think there's maybe too much of a dependence on coaches now? Like people want their hands held now and they're not kind of like doing anything for themselves? Or do you think it's better that way, that someone's kind of taking the reins, so to speak?
It's good and it's not. Sometimes I do get ridiculous questions and I'm like, this could be solved by your own common sense. Or not even that. Sometimes I just have to be like, it's not that confusing. Don't look that deep into it. I get like questions about some really specific stuff. And yeah, I am happy answering them because that's my job to answer the questions. But I'm like, it's not that confusing. And we don't need to make it that confusing. We need to keep it simple. The question might be so intricate and pointless to our actual overall look or whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't want you to worry about it. So stop thinking about things too deep. So I think even though you do have a coach now, I think things are also looked at a little bit too deep in terms of what you need to do. Like there should be an answer for every single little specific thing, where sometimes it's just get your head down and graft.
Yeah, that's one thing to take away. It's like no matter what split you're on, what diet you're on, how many PDs you're taking, whatever, the main thing to bear in mind is if you work hard, you're going to get the best results despite what you're doing. So, you know, I think that aspect is definitely, don't expect your coach to like hold your hand through everything. You still have to put in a good amount of work. You still have to put in that graft. You know, they're just showing you the guidelines, you know.
Yeah, I like to make sure that my clients are very well educated on what's going on as well, because I don't want you just following orders. You need to have fucking common sense when it comes to this. And I want you to make your own decisions at times. And you also need to be, I think there's obviously a lack of understanding of people in their own bodies, and people are expecting their coach to do everything. And it's like, if you're a bodybuilder, you'll learn to understand your own body off your own back. Yes, you'll have a coach there to guide, but you will also be taking mental notes yourself or physical notes, just saying what exercises you enjoy, the training that you enjoy, works well for you, what body parts you need to improve, what works well for your digestion, because ultimately you're the only one that can actually understand your body. I'm not inside your body as a coach. I know what I know in terms of like making little manipulations here and there, but you're the only one that really understands properly how you're feeling, and you have to be in tune with that. Your coach cannot take over that. So you have to be able to understand your body to give that data feedback to your coach. And that's something that people lack nowadays, is they're not willing to take the time and thought to think about all this little stuff within themselves, and they just try to put it all onto the coach. And it's like, there are some issues that you need to deal with yourself, and then just translate the information, and then the coach works with the information rather than the coach directly fucking trying to fully understand your body. Because yeah, we can understand bodies because of our experience, but we need some very good feedback. The better feedback you can give to your coach and the better understanding you have of your own body is going to obviously make the process a lot easier. So don't just step back on that because you have a coach.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. It's only going to make the coach-client relationship even better, isn't it? Because the coach is going to get to know the client's body just as well as the client's getting to know their own body. And then you'll find you become a better bodybuilder, because say the time does come where you don't have a coach, you've got all this data that you've worked off of, you've got all this knowledge to apply to yourself. Yeah. So as opposed to getting a coach, then you don't hire the coach anymore, and then you're stuck because you didn't take notes. You don't know what you're doing. You know, that's like a trap that you get into. And then how many times do you see it? People compete, they drop their coach, and then they go off the rails because they didn't learn anything. They didn't know what to do.
Yeah, you got to absorb everything. You got to have a coach that educates and not just tells. One of my most proficient clients, bodybuilder Callum, how I work with him is I just give him macros a lot of the time, and he can work off macros because I know that he's not stupid and he understands what he needs to do. Same with training. He understands what he needs to do within training. I don't really have to give him a specific training program. I give him guidelines. He understands he needs to fucking just get stronger and lift more weight. And a coach's job sometimes is not to be that direct, it's just to be that source of accountability and that guidance. So I can just give him something so base to follow, but because he's so understanding of his own physique, that works well. And same with me and Hader just might message me saying like 300 grams of carbs, and I'm like, all right, cool, sorted, done. Protein will stay the same, fats will stay the same, but he might just say 200 grams of carbs, 300 grams. So I'll go and work out and do that myself because he knows I'm not gonna try and fit Smarties in there or whatever. Same with training as well. We just had a phone call and it's like, right, we should not load lower back on this day. We should go about 14 working sets on this day. And then we just kind of talk through it. But in terms of exercise selection and sending a full training program, that's not what we do because he understands that I know my own body and how I like to train. So I don't need a full training program because I'm an efficient bodybuilder within myself. So the more efficient bodybuilder you can be within yourself, like you don't need that direct like coaching sometimes in terms of like full plans of everything. You just need that base guidance and then you work from that. So that's why one of my clients, Callum, is very, very efficient by himself. He just uses that guideline to keep him progressing, and he progresses like crazy.
And that's all come from experience, isn't it? It's all come from experience and learning what's good, what's not. So you're at this level now where, like you say, you can take macros and you can just fit them in. You know exactly what you're doing. So yeah.
Well, so I spoke on the Athlete Insight podcast, and Isaac, he's 6 weeks out. He works off macros.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about working off macros, we're not talking about if it fits your macros type of a thing. We're talking about we understand the food sources and what we need to be having within that. So we would have rice, we'd pick salmon, we'd pick chicken, we'd pick all the right sources because we know what we need to be having.
That's one thing. If anyone's listening, when we're talking about fitting the macros, it's not like Dudley's got 500 grams of carbs, so he's going to put a pizza in there. It's literally like you said, choosing the food sources. So you will pick a food source. 100 grams of oats, you might switch out. You might do cream of rice. You might do like say ground rice. It's swapping the foods and food sources that are whole foods, but you're just literally changing the source, aren't you? Like it's not, oh, can I fit 50 grams of sweets into my meal because I can get away that carbs. Like Dudley said way back, you got to think of the micronutrients as well. It's not just whatever fits your macros. But what we were saying though, Dudley, like to the position that you're in now and that your client Callum's in now, that's experience that they've gained, and that's like growth, isn't it? It's growth from
when he first started with me. So we did the first prep. He first started with me. He had a full meal plan. He had everything in terms of what he needed, a base training structure. And then because we worked through that together, he understands how I want him to train. He understands how I want him to eat. So now the coaching relationship's at a point where it's like, bro, you know what I'm asking you to do. And when I'm giving you this amount of food, to split it between 6 meals to what to prioritize and where to put your fats and where to put your carbs. You know how I expect you to train and stuff like that. So once he understands the base of kind of what I expect as a coach, then he knows what he needs to do. I just need to give him the guidelines from it. So yeah, when you first sign up, you'll get all this training program, diet program, everything. But as the coaching relationship develops and you really understand as an athlete what I expect as a coach, we can just have stuff so basic. You just need to follow and do it yourself, and small adjustments, understanding your own body.
Like you say, Dudley, like that's like definitely alludes to kind of the overall impact that from your first show to where how you eventually progress. Like you do gain experience along the way, don't you? That's just something that comes with it. It's like the on the list, like you're saying, with the self-confidence thing, you can go from being a first timer and having no confidence, etc., to becoming where you are now, where you are confident. You know how your body works. You know how to train. You know how to manipulate food sources, etc. That's a positive impact, isn't it, from competing that you've got to now just through experience. So
yes,
it definitely, it just takes time. It takes time to really become at one with bodybuilding, doesn't it? It's a
Yeah.
long journey, but it does take time.
I think there, obviously, we're an hour in now. We've covered everything leading up until stepping on stage. So I think we'll leave stepping on stage for part 2, where we'll talk about kind of the backstage stuff and stepping on stage actually for the first time, and what it's like after the competition, dealing with post-competition, your results and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that in part 2, but this part 1 has ended up just being everything leading up to stepping on stage first time, from picking your coach, from picking a show, learning the federations, the posing. But we didn't even expect it to take this long, but that's how much information is
Right.
just even before you stepping on stage. It's good for you to get all this stuff that we've talked about locked.
We thought this might be like a 40-minute episode.
Yeah, I thought we'll run through these, but yeah, honestly, we were only halfway through, and we've not even stepped on stage yet. We've not even stepped on stage. So definitely from part 2, we talk about, all right, now we actually step on stage. What happens here? Have you got anything else to say to round up kind of that first timers experience part 1?
I guess like what we were saying, that it's kind of like before you even get on stage, it's like everything to do with coaches, your mindset, where you're at, picking the right show, picking the right fed, literally everything we've run through. That's like our experience of that, and then describing how it is now. I think that's basically everything covered.
Yeah.
Okay. But like I say, one key thing is just pick the right show, pick the right coach. Don't get a coach that's going to put you on like a gram of gear for your first cycle, and you should be all good. Yeah.
And understand your own body, understand your own mentality, become one with bodybuilding, and obviously really take into account the pressure thing. And now it's different now compared to how it was as a first timer. Like back in the days, we were saying there wasn't as much pressure on us to be as good, but nowadays there's a lot more pressure. So you need to learn how to deal with that mentally. And obviously you probably need to come in better physically. The whole overall experience has changed, and you do need to be better now going into your first show, and a lot more dialed in and regimented, just because standards have changed and stuff like that. So yeah, take a note of all these points. I'll put the timestamps down below. I've made some notes today, so it's easier for me to get the timestamps in rather than rewatching the whole hour video. But now we're at the end of the Physique Talks podcast, so we're going to just kind of run through some bodybuilding stuff as we've done over the past few weeks. So in terms of bodybuilding news, what's been going on, obviously over the past weekend we've had the Orlando Pro. So let me just share my screen and let's have a quick look at the results and just talk a little bit about that, because we had Phil Kahar, who is a fucking masters.
Yeah.
This will be a... So let's run over the show first. So these are good picks. Where's the oh, here we are. Yeah, so this is the top 2 from the Orlando Pro. What do you think about Hassan Mustafa getting second again?
You know what? With Hassan, I think it's the condition, isn't it? From the side shots and the rear. You know, his glutes from the side shot and stuff. Because he basically dominates on size, doesn't he? He dominated Ian on size.
Yeah, you can see in that front shot, like, look at his like, but I mean, Phil just looked wide and his waist is tighter. And
that's it. That's one thing I was going to mention, actually. Hassan, his waist always seems to be like off-putting a bit in most of his shots. You know, like it just kind of takes away from his overall physique. Whereas, like, say, Phil, look at even in that most muscular, look how small his waist is, look how tapered his waist is.
Yeah.
You know, that's definitely a big aspect.
And this was Phil's first pro win.
Yeah. When I saw,
he's 50 years old, and it was his first pro win, and he's in a couple of weeks. He's now got the Masters Olympia, which obviously everyone's looking at him to go and win the Masters Olympia. How old is Hassan? Is he like 30? He says 92 there.
You know what, Hassan? I think he's like late 20s or early 30s.
He's quite young too. So I'm 96 and I'm 26.
So he's,
what does that make him? 30?
Yeah, about 30. Yeah,
we're guessing that's his age.
Yeah,
so like 20 years difference between the two of them. Phil's looking good, man, for a 20-year difference.
Yeah, he looks look at that V-tape there on that front lat. I think, yeah. Look, you see Hassan from the rear.
People are saying, "Oh, it's a robbery and stuff," but I don't think it is. I think Phil definitely takes it.
Go to that front lat spread, Dudley. Look at that, man.
This, yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Like that's proper, isn't it? That front lat spread.
Yeah.
Shape.
You've got to just think about shape. I kept seeing this comment on a thing when I was watching it live, and it was like the guy kept copying and pasting the same thing, and he was like, "This is a bodybuilding show. Hassan has the most mass. He should have won." And he just copied and pasted that, and he just kept putting it in. And I was like, bodybuilding is not just about mass; it's about all this other stuff. And Hassan's stomach distension was brought up at the Toronto show as well. So it's something that he knows he has to work on. And did it potentially even look even worse this time?
Yeah, because look in that side chest, you see he's not breathing in at all. He's just let his stomach distend out, even in that side chest. Have you noticed?
Yeah, whereas Phil
just upright, keeping it tight.
He looks hard. He looks very hard. He just looks solid.
I think with Hassan, he's got quite a big following, like a die-hard following, hasn't he? So if he loses, they're just automatically like, oh, he's bullshit.
The Middle Eastern guys always do. The Middle Eastern guys, man, like you can't say nothing about them because it's game over.
Yeah.
Didn't Ian say something one time about someone? Oh no, that was the Brazilians. The Brazilians as well.
Yeah.
Anyone who's Brazilian, yeah, game over for you. Game over them.
This isn't a robbery though at all. This is not a robbery. This is a well deserved win.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we definitely have to cover the Masters Olympia as well because that'd be interesting. Yeah, obviously Phil would look like a front runner now for
that. They call him the Jamaican tank as well, so he's one of my Jamaican. So, happy for him to have got his first pro win here. And
yeah, man, that's sick.
What people are saying are looking at, does Hassan go back to AJ? Was that because he was coached by AJ last year? He won 2 shows.
Did well, didn't he? Yeah.
Now he's done 2 shows under Chad Nichols, and he's placed second in both of them. So is it a coaching issue? Does something need to change in terms of protocols? Is he not getting the peak right? Does he just need to work with Chad longer and then they'll eventually figure it out? Do you reckon he should stick it out or move back to someone like AJ?
I think when you look at the placings, like maybe it is down to the Chad learning his body a bit more because he probably could have beaten Ian and he probably could have beaten Phil if he was on, couldn't he? If he was actually on. So yeah, maybe it's just down to them learning to his body a bit more. But
yeah, does he give him time though? Because he needs the Olympia qualification. So does he add that time? Or does he move in, or does he say to AJ, right, let's go and let's hit this 3rd show and qualify for the Olympia?
Yeah, I think if he gave it another shot, he could definitely get.
He won 2 shows last year with AJ, so he could just go back to AJ and say, look, we won 2 shows last year. Let's do exactly the same thing and get me this Olympia qualification.
Yeah, he could.
2 shows in now. Like, I don't know what's the next show. Is it Tampa?
Yeah, it's Tampa.
Tampa. I think you've got Hunter Labrada.
Oh, so
like he's pretty much he's coming in close there. Is he going to beat Hunter and get that Olympic? So he knows he's cutting it close now in terms of getting that qualification. So
yeah,
could we see Hassan returning to AJ over the next few weeks to bring it in?
Could be a possibility. Be interesting to see.
I wanted to kind of bring up a spot, like obviously looking when we didn't expect Phil Cahart to win this at all. I think we all expected Hassan to win anyway. And then obviously we was looking at Stanimal on that list and thinking, yeah, these are the guys that are really the names standing out. Phil wasn't a name that was standing out to come in and take the win. So it was a bit of a shock win, but a very much deserved. I don't think it was a robbery at all. 4th place, I've got him up here. Emmanuel Alvarez. Very, very fucking impressive. Very impressive. Very, very, very impressive. This with more muscle is going to be wild. So he took 4th. I don't know how old he is.
Looks young.
I feel like, if you push to open, you'd be bringing something like this.
Yeah, bro. That's that kind of classic sort of flow with the size. Yeah, really nice.
It's such a classic flow, but with the mass.
When you see it with the mass, it is impressive, isn't it? It is impressive.
I don't know, like I said, I don't know how old he is, but time seems to be on his side. And over the next few years, turn into a very, very good physique if he manages to hold the waist in, keep the same flow of the physique.
Yeah, really nice.
This is going to be really nice. I think he's uploaded some photos as well.
I think, to be fair, Stanimal looked really good as well. Yeah, that's That's solid, man. Yeah, really nice.
Stan came third.
Third. I thought Stan will look really good. To be fair, I thought it's probably the best I've ever seen him. Yeah, look at that taper.
That taper's crazy. I think more mass, more arms, more chest, but just more mass everywhere. I mean, his legs.
Yeah, maybe more detail in the quads as well, like conditioning.
More calves.
Yeah, more calves. Yeah.
Look at that shot, man. For an open bodybuilder, like Samson had that kind of same flow.
Yeah.
Managed to keep this shot, but by adding fucking just mass everywhere. And Samson hits the shot exactly the same now, but just looks like an absolute monster. Yeah, so, like I said, if this Emmanuel Alvarez guy can keep this kind of flow and just add on some serious mass,
yeah, that's gonna look impressive.
I think that back shot doesn't look good at all, does it? Can definitely get more out of that.
Maybe it was mid. If that wasn't mid pose, then yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't have posted it, me. No. But elbows can come higher on that. He can definitely be a little bit more, bring his lats out of touch. That looks good though.
That's good.
Can see Stan there as well.
Yeah, because Stan was in classic briefly, wasn't he? And he moved to open. But I always find that if you can keep that classic shape, if you can keep that nice structure that you've got with the size, I always feel like that is bodybuilding. Like what we said last week, you got like a Nick Walker and a Samson. Samson is bodybuilding. That is bodybuilding to me,
Yeah.
I feel like that's really in open, especially because I feel like
we enjoy seeing the nicks and stuff like that. Yeah. But when it comes to like what we actually look at as art in bodybuilding and like a proper, this is art. This is what we aim to create and build. It's not just mass. It's definitely something like Samson, or I'd love to have this physique here. I would love to have this guy's physique. Yeah, awesome. But like I said, I don't know his age. Did he maybe post it on this? I'm not sure.
It's hard to tell sometimes with these guys, isn't it?
He looks like he's in his 20s.
Yeah, he looks young. Maybe like our age, maybe mid-20s or something.
Scary when you say our age, and you're like, right.
Yeah. You used to be the young guns. Now
someone says our age, like, right.
Yeah.
Did you see the guy that Hostiles just signed?
I'd actually, I was going to watch that. It's some young.
Yeah, let's have a look. Hostile Subs, do you reckon they would have posted him? Yeah, this kid here. Yeah, he's 21 years old.
That's great.
And I was watching the video. I was like, "Rah, this kid's 21. Is it? Oh no, it's not this guy. This is the guy that visited his house. What's he called?
I saw that picture.
Yeah, this guy. So his man's not even got an Instagram, bro. He just does TikToks and that. But he's 21 years old.
Oh.
Just an absolute beast. And you look at that and you're like, yo, I've got work to do.
Yeah, that's mad for 24. That's insane.
But yeah, what we're gonna look at next, where we at? Do you want to take a look at Justin Shear?
Yeah, let's do a quick look at him.
Justin.
Just because we were following his, lead up to
that last week. What's his most recent? I've not seen this.
Looking a lot sharper.
Yeah, that's looking real good. So
you were saying last week, like, will he be on point with his conditioning? But like I said, even in a week, that's a week between the pictures,
I mean, a lot, and that's what Tampa. Is it Tampa? So him, Hassan, Hunter, they're the top three going for the Olympia qualification in that. So like we were saying about Hassan, like his Olympia qualification is getting tighter and tighter because the standards of these shows are now improving. And I think maybe this show that he's just come second in was probably his easiest chance to kind of get that Olympia qualification looking at the running now, because if Justin doesn't get it in 3 weeks, he's going to go again. If Hunter doesn't get it in 3 weeks, he's going to go again. So all these guys are going to go again if they don't get it. So he's going to continue. He'll be 5 shows down the line by then, whereas these guys will be still fresh at 1-2.
Yeah, like you say, all the good guys are starting to come out the woodwork now, so the standard's getting increased. And like you say, he's potentially going to get worse if he starts to tire out through the season. So like, this might be his last chance. If Hunter comes in off and Justin comes in off, he might get it, but
Well, yeah, it don't look like Justin's trying to come in off at all.
no, no.
At all.
You know what? I'll be really interested to see what this looks like stacked up next to those guys.
Yeah,
Because it's all well and good seeing it on Instagram, but I'm really keen to see that shape next to other guys. You know, is he going to dominate, or is he going to sort of blend in? You know.
Yeah, for a debut, so we need to see how he stacks up against like Hunter. Do we have any updates from Hunter? Or when was this?
7
A
days.
week ago. Hunter's just got that mass.
Yeah, he's just got that thickness. He's just.
And we're seeing how he's looking now, not on the whey shake diet.
Yeah,
You guys
he's stopped finally.
Hunter's living his life off whey protein shakes because he doesn't like eating. There's always he just drinks shakes. Finally now gone on to like chicken and rice, and like actual whole food sources, and we're seeing his physique turn into something different.
Man.
He did good to get to where he got to by just drinking whey shakes and blending everything. Now I think we're really going to see this Hunter come in and take some heads.
Yeah, man. Just goes to show quality of the food does count, not just hitting the macros.
Yeah, 100%. How many weeks?
His waist looks small as well.
Looks tight. So it's gonna be a good battle, especially like I said, if Hassan's jumping in that show. We've got Hassan, Hunter, and Justin trying to get that Olympia qualification for this year. Olympia will be a good one. I'm hoping to get to the Olympia.
Yeah, sick.
So it's just my birthday. Why not treat myself?
Oh, mate, yeah. It's Orlando this year, isn't it?
Yeah, and Orlando's so much cheaper and easier to get to than.
Oh, mate, yeah. Do it. That'll be sick.
Birthday present to myself.
Yeah, man. Why not?
Okay. All right. So last up, let's just bring it to talk a little bit about obviously what's happened in terms of Joe Linda. What did you want to say about that? Obviously, it's tragic hearing, and the speculation on it was obviously PEDs, anabolics. Is that what caused it? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think this is something to address. Just as I was saying to Dudley, like, obviously it is a tragedy, it's a massive tragedy, and he was only 30 years old, which is tragic. But the first thing that I saw when I went on some of the pages was, shouldn't have done steroids, shouldn't have done PEDs. Well, why did he waste his life on PEDs? And I thought the narrow-mindedness of people to automatically assume this was down to what steroids he was taking. I just think there's such a what's the word? Stigma, isn't there? If a bodybuilder passes away, automatically people are like, oh, it's steroids. When it actually appears that Joe had an aneurysm in his neck, and that can happen to anyone. That could happen to a perfectly fit and healthy 21-year-old female. But if that happened to them, no one would say about their lifestyle or anything, would they?
No.
But as soon as it's a bodybuilder, it's got to be PEDs, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. Don't get me wrong, we're not condoning PEDs, not saying that it's not going to contribute to any other health problems. But I just thought it was a shame that people automatically went to that, and they just didn't give any respect to his name or anything. They just automatically said, oh, shouldn't have done steroids and stuff like that. I think that stigma is something that we hopefully can look to change in the future, but I just thought it was sad that this guy's passed away.
I was shocked. I didn't see it. It seems like, when you see the Jackie Chan post when it's like Jackie Chan, whatever died, and they're just bullshitting. But it's one of those kind of things. It's just like, oh,
yeah, he didn't. Came out of nowhere, literally. Yeah, it's sad. It is sad.
But from what I was hearing, it was just he was feeling a pain in his neck for a few days, and he did mention it to his team. No one really did anything about it, and then kind of I think he laid down in bed, and then that something just stopped going to his brain, and then that was it. It was that from there. So when you do have these issues, if you are feeling any type of way, if you've got a pain in your neck and whatever, try and deal with it. Like, go A&E. see a doctor, speak to people. I mean, he did speak to his team. Maybe they should have had more of a proactive approach on it.
Yeah, definitely. Take it more seriously than just shrug it off.
Yeah, we need to take these little things seriously. And even though we don't want to put it on PEDs, we do need to remember we are taking PEDs. So any little thing like that, just because we do what we do, get it checked out as soon as you can and leave it and think it'll go away. So if you ever feel any type of way, any pains anywhere, approach it swift, fast, so you can avoid death. That's the ultimate price to pay. That's covered that. So that is bodybuilding for this week, and that is Physique Talks episode number 3. How do we finish it off?
Sweet.
I'm happy with that episode. It was longer than
it's great. Yeah, went on. Yeah, it just goes to show though there's so much to cover, isn't it? We said this about the cost of bodybuilding as well. We were like, we'll get it done in an hour. We ended up splitting it into 2 parts. So that's what we're going to cover next week. The cost of bodybuilding part 2.
The cost of bodybuilding part 2 will come next week, where we cover relationships and mental side. Is it?
Cost, the actual financial costs.
Financial costs and relationships and stuff like that. Which we had a little bit of a conversation pre-recording the podcast, which could be interesting for me. Could bring up a lot of problems. Is what it is. I like telling.
Worth it for the content, bro.
But next time when we do the first timers experience part 2, which might even just be the week following that, we'll figure it out. We've got managing nerves and anxiety on competition day, backstage experience, interactions with other competitors, emotions, experience while on stage, dealing with the highs and lows of the results, impact of the experience, personal growth, self-confidence, post-competition recovery, transitioning back to a normal routine, which we've kindly covered on our first ever episode. So that'll be linked if you want to go and watch that as well. And the lessons learned from really the first competition and the experiences, the areas of improvement that we identified, and then where we went on from there, from the first competition, and planning the future after you're not a first timer anymore and you can't enter those shows with other first timers, and you got to bite the bullet and jump in with people that might have done it 5-10 times before. So we've got all of that to cover in part 2 of this. Hope you all enjoyed part 1. Anything to say before we sign off?
That's pretty much it, man. Catch you on the next one.
All right, cool. We're out in a bit.